you're not allowed to go to your employer and say, I want to negotiate a better wage for myself, because the union insists on having monopoly bargaining rights. The argument is the labor union is protecting the rights of the worker. No. The labor union is taking away the rights of the worker, because the worker no longer has the right to do his own negotiating, to negotiate for himself. He turns that all over to the union, and he has to do whatever the union tells him to do. The union tells him this is what your salary is going to be or your wage is going to be. We've decided we're going to go out on strike. You have no say. Another common reason that the unions come up with why right to work is bad is that it's the right to work for less. And they point out, for example, that on average, right to work states, the wages are about $5,000 less annually than in unionized states. Again, they only show you one half of the coin. They don't show you the other side of the coin. The other side of the coin is the cost of living in states that allow compulsory unionism is significantly higher than in right-to-work states. In fact, the cost of living is so much higher that it wipes out the wage differential, more than wipes it out. So that on average, the standard of living in right-to-work states is higher because the cost of living is so much lower. So, sometimes you hear the argument, well, look at the poverty rates in right-to-work states. The poverty rates are higher, and they love to point it to examples like Mississippi or Alabama or Louisiana. And if you just look at the poverty rate of a state like Mississippi, you say, well, okay. But as the old saying goes, correlation does not imply causation. And that's another example of, look at this side of the coin, don't look at that side. What happens when you look on the other side of the coin? Well, you dig a little deeper and you find out, why is the poverty rate in Mississippi so much higher than in the rest of the country? Turns out that the black population in Mississippi is about 37% of the population. Nationwide, it's a little over 12%. So Mississippi proportionally has 3 times the black population compared to the country as a whole. Now, why is that significant? Well, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, something like 72% of children born in the black population are born out of wedlock. Okay, why is that significant? Well, as it turns out, the out-of-wedlock birth situation is the #1 predictor of household poverty in America, especially for childhood poverty. A child born to a mother who's not married at the time that he's born is 5 times more likely to live in poverty than if he's born to a woman who's married and that child is growing up in a house with the mother and father present. So now do you understand why the poverty rate is so much higher in Mississippi? It's not because it's a right-to-work state. It's because of the social problem that I've just described. But of course, they don't want you to know that. That's not what they want you to see. They don't want you to know the truth. I could bury you with a lot of statistics about, and that's what they did in Madison, you know. And the thing is about statistics, I remember when I was in junior high school, I went to the library and I got a book out called How to Lie with Statistics. And as Mark Twain said, there are lies, there are damn lies, and then there are statistics. And you can cherry pick information and data points and statistics all day long to prove or disprove whatever point you want to make. But for me, it's a matter of principle. And that principle is basically freedom. The freedom to choose whether you want to pull money out of your pocket and give it to a labor union or not in order to get a job. And you know, I heard so much evidence in Madison about how even companies were getting up there and, oh, right to work is going to really turn over the apple cart and it's going to upset training programs and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I got up there and I said, let's see if I understand this correctly. All we're going to do, all this law does is it gives a worker the freedom to decide one little thing. Is he going to pay dues to a labor union or not? And if we give him that one little piece of freedom, the whole system is going to collapse. The state of Wisconsin is going to go swirling down the drain. It didn't happen in Michigan. It didn't happen in Indiana. They passed right-to-work legislation over the past 3 years. And look at those two states. They've turned around practically on a dime. Indiana is booming. Michigan, I mean, who would have ever guessed Michigan would go right to work? But I guess what happened was the citizens in Michigan looked at Detroit and went, Jesus, I don't think we want any more of that. I mean, Detroit is now like a third world country. That's what the United Auto Workers did to Detroit. So that's pretty much. I was asked to comment on right to work. I was asked to comment on minimum wage and also prevailing wage. And it's already 8 o'clock, so I just want to briefly start going over the minimum wage and then even more briefly over prevailing wage. I think we all understand the concept of minimum wage. It's where the government comes in and sets a minimum that employers have to pay employees. The other side of the coin that is, though, it's the government saying to potential workers, no, if you can find a job for less than $7.25 an hour, no, you can't have it. No, we're going to make you stay unemployed. I don't know what there is to be gained by that. But one of the guys on the panel, one of the Democratic politicians in the Assembly, after I gave my little spiel about, well, much of what I told you, I told him. And he said, sounds to me like you don't like minimum wage. You think that wages should be set by the law of the jungle. I said, you know, when the government sets a minimum wage, that's an act of coercion. That's an act of force. That's an act of might makes right. That's the law of the jungle. I'm saying let's have freedom. Let's have voluntary negotiation. Let's have an employer-employee sit down and voluntarily work out an agreement. You want coercion. You want the government to step in and force its will. That's the law of the jungle. I don't want the law of the jungle. You do. And then labor unions come in, and through coercion, intimidation, the threat of violence, vandalism, they want to impose their will. They want to get what they want through coercion and the law of the jungle. And you're up there defending it. I don't want the law of the jungle. You do. He just said, thank you for your testimony, Mr. Farmer. And he cut me off and I had to go sit down. You know, another thing that the labor unions like to say is that they created the middle class. And that's another thing this guy was saying during his cross-examination of other people making testimonies. And I said, you know, you say that labor unions create the middle class. I said, then how come labor unions are not over in Africa right now creating a middle class over there? Because they can't.